Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Unity of Houston. Yeah, really an honor to live with that music and be with it, and it's really inspired my message of what I'm sharing with you tonight. So the last line was, we're not exactly who we seem to be. So who are we? Who are we? It's a question that's pretty easy for most of us to answer, right? And I'd say, I'm Jeanmarie. I'm a minister, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, I'm a Houstonian. You know, those are all aspects of who I am. We could call that the personality, the ego, you could call it. That aspect of us that is changing, that is changeable. But is that who we really are? Is that the truth of who we really are? So perhaps the question is not, who are you? Or who am I? But what? What am I? The what am I? What are you? The psalmist David was yearning to know the answer to that question for himself. He was calling out to God in awe of the majesty, the wonder of creation of the universe. And in the 8th Psalm, he sings out to God. The Psalms are songs, and he sings this out to God. And he says, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you've established, what are human beings that you're mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. You have made them a little lower than God. He's saying that God has made us a little lower than God itself, or then some translations say the angels, a little lower than the angels, and crown them with glory and honor. When I think of crown, I think of how in our chakra system, the crown chakra, the Christ consciousness, that glory and honor, the Christ nature. You have given them dominion over the work of your hands, over the creative process, over creation. You have put all things under their feet, the sheep and oxen, also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord our God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. That's how the psalm goes. The truth of who we are is the what that we are. David tells us we're just a little lower than God, crowned with glory and honor, given dominion over all the earth. In unity, that what is what we call our individuality, our Christ nature. It's unchanging, it's eternal, it can never be destroyed. It's the creative source in us, our true spiritual identity, what we call our true self, our real self, the divine that we are. So we have this human personality, right, the persona, this who that we are, the who of us, and the divine individuality, the what of us. We're living a kind of dual reality, aren't we? Human, divine. There is that of you that's really coming from the heart, that's centered in peace and love and understanding. That's the beingness of life. And then there are the meetings and the emails and the phone calls and the traffic and the things that you need to deal with, picking up dog poop and changing diapers. Oh, wait, that's just me. Washing dishes, those are regular stuff, the stuff of life that doing, going, getting things done, doing this. And sometimes you have to work really hard, right, in life. It can really eat you alive if you let it. Do you feel that you get caught up in the doingness of life? I do sometimes. The work, it never seems to get done, and you can be like the Energizer Bunny, you keep going and going and going, right? And there's a lot to do these days. And I've prayed with many of you, talked with you, and there is a busyness to our lives nowadays. It's even beyond the regular busyness. Those of you who have dealt with the flood and are repairing and rebuilding your homes, and you're on the phone with FEMA and insurance agencies and dealing with all of that, even adjusting to a new place to live for a while, it can be challenging. It can get exhausting. I recognize when I'm getting really caught up in the doingness of life, when I wake up in the middle of the night for no reason except that my mind is just racing. Did that happen to you guys? Ever happen to you? You just wake up, your mind's just racing, and it's just, I need to get this done, I need to get that done, and there's this impetus to just go and do it, right? I'm up, let's just go do it. And I have to tell myself, no, now is a time to rest and take care of myself. I've got to talk myself down off of the doingness. It's so funny about my talk being on being human and divine, and when it was announced on Sunday, Karen announced it on Sunday, and she said, Jeanmarie's going to tell you, want to find out about being human and divine, come and hear about it on Wednesday. And Michael said, she's got it all worked out. And I went like this. I was like, me? Wait, he's talking about me? And I thought, well, that's really nice to think that. But I have to say, I would love to get up here and be like, I got it all worked out. I'm the Christ nature is just fully expressing as me. And that's my intention. It's my intention. But I'm a work in progress. We all are. We're a work in progress, right? I'm not there yet. I hope that's okay with you. Is that okay? Okay. I mean, I'm here to learn, and every sermon that I do is really for myself. And you get to eavesdrop on that, but I really am talking to myself. I'm learning right along with you. I'm in ministry for the own evolution of my soul, and that's what I'm here to do. In the song that I shared with you, it talks about the trouble that we get into when we get caught up in our humanity, in that personality. There's a lot of pain that we go through in our human life. Agree? No one's exempt from that. There's a pain of loss. There's that pain of needing to be right, wanting it our way, of being attached to certain outcomes. Buddhism teaches about that practice of non-attachment. You ever heard the one about what's the difference between a Buddhist and a vacuum cleaner? The Buddhist comes without attachments. So that's part of that practice. Is can you live without being attached? It's part of our human experience to be that way. It's a challenge to be in the world where everybody appears different, right? Everybody. So there's already that idea that they look different, and we're separate, we're not one. We can suffer when we get caught in that machine of life. It's like being a robot. You're moving, the gears are going, you're in that flow of the doingness. We get caught up in the three-dimensional reality of life. But the song says, but there really is no trouble at all if you just breathe and take it all in. So what does that mean, to breathe and take it all in? How do we do that? To me, what it means to me is seeing where I'm taking refuge. Where am I taking refuge? I realize I can take refuge in my ego, in my belief system, in my strategy. So where do you go when you feel frazzled with life? Do you take refuge in your mind and thinking and mulling it over and over again, putting the mind into overdrive? We all do that at times. This takes us away from our true self. Buddhism teaches the practice of taking refuge in the Buddha. In unity, we can understand that as taking refuge in the Christ, in our divine nature, going to that, to our individuality, our true nature in times of the busyness and the doingness, getting into the beingness. Say it with me. I take refuge in the Christ. And take a breath. Let go. And know that you can always come home to that place of refuge within you. And the way that we can do that is beginning with the breath, just taking that breath in the midst of it all, taking that time to breathe, to shift from the doingness into the beingness, into our being. Knowing that all I need to do right now is breathe. That's my practice. When my mind is racing, I've got to give myself a moment to just get in touch with the breath. And that's all I need to do in that moment. I'm just breathing. And that it downshifts the busyness. It gets me back in touch with who I am, the truth of who I am. Just that focusing on the breath gets me back to the ground of my being. And I come back home to my true nature. And then I recognize in that centering that I'm more than my personality, than the role that is occupying my mind as minister or mom or dog poop picker-upper. I realize the me that is eternal. The ego has no form. It only has the form that we give it. We're constantly creating it. It doesn't really have any power of its own because it's not real with a capital R, real. It's not the truth of us. And yet the ego is very much a part of our human experience. Our Unity Dictionary, the revealing word, says the ego is a mere ignorant child of innocence floating in the mind of being, but through the door of its consciousness must pass all the treasures of God. I love that. And the ego, we use the ego we can experience God through that. It's useful. We're not trying to get rid of it. It's part of the human experience. But it doesn't have the whole picture. It doesn't have the whole picture, even though it thinks it does. God mind has all that we need to know. And so we can let go of our sense of what needs to happen. We have that need, that attachment, right, to what needs to happen, and open up to God and know that through the divine mind, whatever we need to know is revealed. So we really want the ego to be a servant to spirit. That's our work. It is not to eliminate it, but to allow it to be a servant. So what's the alternative? Besides taking refuge in the Christ, going within, well, there's that going to the personality as our refuge. Okay, we go to the personality, but which one? Which one of our many selves do we go to for refuge? The Fillmore teachings tell us that we have many selves. In the 12 powers, it states, the atom human being exists in the subconsciousness as a multitude of people. The wise person and the foolish person. The kind person and the cruel person. See if you hear yourself in these. The loving person and the hateful person. The stingy person and the generous person. The hungry person and the full person. The happy person and the troubled person. The weak person and the strong person. The good person and the bad person. The live person and the dead person. The poor person and the rich person. The timid person and the courageous person, the sick person and the healthy person, the old person and the young person, the erratic person and the sane person, these and 1,000 other types of man as active personalities occupy the consciousness of every human being. That's a lot of persons. Do you recognize yourself in those? The times when you feel poor, you feel rich, you feel healthy, you feel sick, you're all these different personalities, personas showing up. How do you take refuge in that? None of them are really the truth of you. They're partial. We can experience ourselves as different people because the personality is constantly shifting and changing. When our lives are dominated by personality, we're inconsistent, we're unpredictable. There's a story which I love to go to in the Gospel of Mark about Jesus healing a man who was possessed by demons. And the Gospel called him a man with an impure spirit who was often heard screaming at night. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. This man was unstable mentally and emotionally. He was unbalanced, and no one could control him, and he couldn't control himself. When Jesus asked him his name, he answers, "My name is Legion, for we are many." What are the many? Today, we would say of this man that he had a fractured psyche, that he was lost in many personalities. He was acting out unconsciously. In Jesus' day, the explanation of the many would be demons. That's how they understood that way that's showing up with the multiple personalities. Legion is a Roman army term referring to a company of generally 6,000 soldiers. That's where that word comes from. And I see this action of Legion, of how he was showing up. This is an extreme version of our normal egoic state with the many personas, many personalities. Even in our normal egoic state that we're usually in, we have many selves. Like the Fillmores explain, one day you're wise, another day you're foolish. One day you're healthy, another day you're sick. One day you're hateful, another day loving. It's as if internally we're at odds with ourselves. The trouble comes when, like Legion, we let our fractured selves take over. Have you ever had something happen to you and you feel like some negativity just takes over who you are, and you just get wrapped up in that negativity, and you just feel like your energy shifted, and you're like, who is this person? You get all into like who did you wrong and all into your drama. It's like you go unconscious. Eckhart Tolle talks about that as the pain body, getting into the pain body, that pain body arising. It can happen when someone offends you, when someone brings up a painful memory. You can get stuck in your internal conditioning and inner conflict. And you can feel it in other people when they get all caught up in their drama. It's like, ugh, I don't want to be around that. You know? Jesus said to Legion, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." When we take refuge in the Christ within, we can be present to that shadow part of ourselves that shows up, that pain body, as it's arising. By being with it and breathing into it, not acting out of it, which could be our natural tendency to do, but being with it, loving it. We don't push it further back into the shadow and repress it more and kind of build up that energy around it. We're loving ourselves through it. And that get out, that clean, removing that unclean spirit is really more of a transformation. We're incorporating that energy into our own wholeness. As we breathe with it, we be with it, we be with the love, we love ourselves through those difficult feelings, we can recognize the truth of our being once again. And it allows us to hold the space for our God awareness to emerge in us. I think a tree tells us everything that we need to know about being human and being divine. If you just look at a tree, starts as a seed, we start as a seed and we grow and we rise up. We rise up in consciousness, we rise up in our learning and our knowing of who we are, and we have our seasons, we have our spring where we have new growth, and we bear our fruit in the summer, and sometimes that fruit has to be let go and allowed to create its own creation, and we release our leaves, we show our full colors, and there are winter times in our lives where things are dormant, right? We've got that tree thing going on. The thing about a tree is that the most important part of the tree is the part that you don't see. It's the root structure that is underneath the ground. A tree's got to have a deep and broad root structure in order to have the strength to grow tall and broad as a tree. And so we need that for ourselves. In order to keep flourishing, we've got to have a deep and rich spiritual life. We've got to get into the unseen aspect of ourselves, our true nature, in order to blossom and bloom into our fullness of our Christ nature. So ask yourself, what is ready to bear fruit in my life? What seeds need to be sown? What needs to be pruned? When we shift from working life from our humanity to being and expressing our divinity, we allow Spirit to do some of the heavy lifting in our lives. We don't have to work so hard. We can let go and we can trust. I want to close my talk tonight with a poem by my spiritual mentor, Unity author and minister Robert Brummett, as he speaks to our experience of being human and divine. The heart is like a river winding through time and space, endlessly yearning for a taste of the sea. The mind is like a road, hard and straight, stretching from city to town to village, endlessly connecting this to that. The journey of the heart makes little sense to the mind. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Why do you wander so aimlessly, wasting time and energy? The heart replies, as gravity is to water, gathering it ever into the sea, so yearning for the divine is to the heart, drawing it ever into the one. When the heart surrenders her yearning, life becomes a river, flowing with no effort, moving with no design, and yet with absolute certainty knows that it is going home. Let us always remember to continue to go home to our true selves, to go home to God. Namaste.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.